Hey guys, it's me Kevin and I'm back with another sports video, and this time I'll be doing a true football video, as in the soccer. Anyway, so today in this video I'm going to be reviewing the 2019-2020 A-League season, which just concluded a week ago. This year has been a very memorable season, for all the wrong reasons that is. Uneven fixturing, with some teams playing each other 3 times and others twice. Bushfires. The summer heat being hotter than ever before, which dearly affected the standard of play in the summer months. And then, well, coronavirus, which drastically compromised the season and meant all the teams had to hub in SYDNE for the last month or so. Well, anyway, the season, after it took 11 months to complete, finally ended last week when SYDNE FC, who had just been crowned the premiers a few weeks before, beat Melbourne City 1-0 in the grand final, even though Melbourne City should have won. Come on. Blocking the view. Is that even a rule? Are you joking? Anyway, Melbourne City should have been crowned champions, but their 17th minute goal got rubbed off, and it went into extra time in SYDNE. Well, Ryan Grant scored off his nipple and won the game. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to review how the season has been like for each of the teams. So, in the wooden spoon position was, for the 3rd time in a row, the Central Coast Mariners. I mean, look, it is disappointing that, once again, they finished bottom of the ladder. But, to be honest, I guess that's what we were expecting. I don't think many people would have expected the Mariners to do much better. I mean, they were the youngest team in the competition. I think their top goal scorer was like Sam Silvera or something. It was Milan Juric. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of good players on that team, like a lot of classy players. Like, I guess Mark Birighitti was decent in the goals. I think he topped the league for shots saved. But even then, he still conceded more goals than any other team, which says a lot about their defense, really. Look, overall, there's positives you can come out of the Mariners season. Let's face it, they won 6 games this year, which is 3 more than their 3 from the year before. They were generally more competitive, and hey, they didn't have that annual 8-2 thrashing like they have every other year, so yeah, and they didn't sack their coach. Look, I think Alan Stagic's doing a fine job. It was always going to be tough, whoever was going to join the Mariners as coach, to try and lift that team off the bottom. It's always going to be a tough job with the Mariners. Look, it's disappointing they finished last, obviously, but I guess that's what you kind of expect. So, look, I guess I'll give them a D, because at the end of the day, they did finish in the wooden spoon position, but they definitely improved from last year's disastrous campaign. The same cannot be said for the team directly above them, Melbourne Victory. Are you kidding me? Like, how did they finish second last? I mean, this is the same team that made the semi-finals last year, won a championship the year before that, and this is a team that's, like, made finals every year for the last 10 years. And then, just crashed to second last all of a sudden. And they weren't even that bad for the first half. Like, they kept about 5 clean sheets, I think it was. And, I think they won, like, 5 out of this. No, they won 6 games, and 4 of those games they won was in the first 14 rounds when Marco Kurz was there. I think that was a stupid mistake, to be honest, to sack Marco Kurz. Yes, Victory were disappointing at the time, but they were in the top 6 at the time, remember. When he left, they just plummeted to 10th, okay? I guess at the end, things were really getting so bad for Victory because they'd lost not their first, but their second coach in Carlos Avacha. They lost their captain and top goal scorer, Olatoyevin, I think is how you pronounce it. And, well, Robbie Cruz got injured, and Andrew Naboot, well, off to Perth Glory. So, look, and there's a few other outs as well, Lawrence Thomas. Look, there are so many outs for Melbourne Victory right now, it's not even funny. But all this could have been avoided. If they kept Kurz, they might have still made the top 6, in my opinion. I mean, they were looking a decent team up until that disastrous loss to the Mariners. And even then, they could have come out with a draw. So, look, Melbourne Victory, they stuffed up big time. They could not handle the loss of Kevin Muscat the year before. Okay, if Kevin Muscat was there, they would have been making another semi. And the other thing that disappoints me, they had Naboot, Toivonen, and Cruz all in the same forward line. That is honestly a dream attack. They should have been the highest or second highest scoring team of the season with those three in there. Instead, they decided to stuff it up big time. So there's no other grade to give them but an F. They had a good team, you would have thought, on paper. They had a really good lineup in the forward line, but they just stuffed the season up terribly, and I have to give them an F. So I guess we're finished with the terrible teams this season. Next, we're off to talking about the Western Sydney Wanderers. Like a few teams in this kind of area, it was a tale of two seasons. Actually, they started off the season very well, undefeated in 4 games and 3 straight wins, including a win to Sydney SC. And then for some reason, Marcus Babbel forgot how to coach, and they just kept losing and losing and losing until eventually he got sacked, which, in my opinion, I think that was a good choice, even though I kind of miss his kind of funny character in the media. Admittedly, I enjoyed seeing what he was up to on the media, so on the media sense, it was a big loss. But when they did sack him, well, John Paul Marini took over, and they've been a pretty good team for the rest of the season. They missed finals, but I think they won more games than they lost. And let's think, they did beat Sydney. In fact, they were the only team to have not lost to Sydney. I think one of the biggest losses was Mitchell Duke. So that's going to be a bit of a loss to try and overcome. But look, DeMarini, well, he's in a good club. Well, in a successful, as in a rich club and a high-profile club. If he can get some good players in there, and Simon Cox can also do all right, then they should be all right. Let's face it, their biggest problem has been not recruiting good marquee players. They've recruited some pretty crap international players, to be honest with you, like Alex Meyer. That was a bit of a disaster. So if he can recruit some good international players, I think the Wanderers could make the finals next year. Have face it, they've got a good stadium. They've got a good supporter base. I think their second half of the year would have been enough to make finals if it was just the second half alone. So I guess I'll give them a C. First half was disastrous, or the latter part of their first half. But they improved during the second half. So, yeah, we'll see how they go next year. If there was one team that should have made finals that didn't, it was this team, Newcastle Jets. So, obviously, the Jet crash-landed back in, when was it, round 13? And then it got rebuilt by Craig Deans, and then he gave the plane to a new pilot in Carl Robinson, and he's taken off, and they're as high as ever. Well, apart from the fact that they didn't make finals, that's the only negative. But I swear, in Carl Robinson's reign, he's lost, just the one game? And that was a 1-0 loss to Brisbane. Apart from that, let's look at who the Newcastle Jets have beaten since he's taken over. They beat Sydney, who won both the Premiership and Championship. They beat Grand Finalist Melbourne City in the last game before coronavirus. They thrashed the Wellington Phoenix 3-0, beat Perth Glory, beat Western United. That's 5 out of the top 6 sides. And also thrashed Adelaide 3-0 as well. They beat 6 out of the top 7 teams. So, really, the only reason they didn't make finals was because of that disastrous part in that, between rounds, 9 to 14? Yeah, they had a disastrous period there. If they had been playing well at the start of the season, they had started on the right foot, they would have been very hard to beat in finals. I bet you they would have made the grand final. And if they could start off well next year, then I'm tipping them for the premiership. Yeah. And to be honest, I didn't notice how good their side was. They've got O'Donovan, Topa Stanley, Jagagovic, Petratus, the Petratus brothers. I think they've got a pretty good lineup for next year. And if they don't lose too many players, then I think they're going to be a very hard team to defeat under Carl Robinson. Oh, yeah. Look, I guess I'll give them a B or a C. I'm not sure. you can't forget that they had a really disastrous start to the season, but their second half was phenomenal. I guess I'll give them a B, even though they missed finals. I guess I'll give them a B because they proved that they could be among the best in that latter part. Another team which was playing exciting football after the COVID bye was Adelaide. Probably not as exciting as Newcastle, but, well, let's face it, they had to play the top 5 teams in the last 5 rounds, and I was going to say that if they did make the finals, they definitely deserved it, because they would have had to beat the top 5 teams to make it. Unfortunately, they didn't, but they did keep an undefeated record with 2 wins and 3 draws, including wins to Brisbane and a thrashing to Perth Glory. Look, they were very inconsistent, Adelaide. They had some very good performances, like they would thrash teams. Like, I'm talking about that game against Victory, the Mariners. That game with Perth Glory. They beat City back in round 17, 3-1. And there were some other really big thrashings from Adelaide. And they also had that 4-3 thrill against Western United. But then there was that horror stretch between rounds 20 to 24 where they conceded 15 goals. And that really stuffed their season up if they had at least gotten a draw out of one of those. Especially, I think the one that cost them was that loss to Melbourne Victory when they conceded in the 90th minute. If they had got that goal, if they hadn't conceded that goal, then they would have been making finals. Look, Riley McGree has been a really good player for them, and he does make a big difference to the team. Look, I think the team is overall pretty good. Paul Izzo was questionable, but I think he's proven that he's still a pretty decent goalkeeper. Overall, I think Adelaide had an average season. I guess you could say C, because I was expecting a little bit more from the Reds, given they had players like McGree, like Morone, in that lineup. And Paul Izzo was not as good as he was last year. Next, in 6th position, was Perth Glory. They should never have made finals. And I'm saying this as a Glory fan, by the way. They should never have made finals. You have teams like Newcastle and Adelaide that missed out. And then a team like Perth Glory who actually made it. I mean, they had a good stretch for 6 weeks between rounds, 9 to 15, where they scored like 17 goals and conceded just 4, I think it was. And that's it. That was their only good patch for the year. And I think they were undefeated for 10 matches. But that was about it for them. They were rubbish early in the season. They were rubbish late in the season. And Liam Reddy, come on. In the semi-final, what was that? Like, how did he kick it into the goals himself? I find that ridiculous, to be honest with you. And that just summed up the Glory season. Liam Reddy was shoddy in the goals since the COVID restart. And Perth Glory overall were just lost. And they're in a bit of a disastrous situation. They've lost like 5 players. Diego Castro wants to sue the club. They lost Popovic. And also their whole financial issues in the chairman level. Look, they have been disastrous. And that's despite the fact they made the finals. I think their best achievement was beating Wellington in the first week of the finals. Probably made their season look a little bit better than it actually was. I'm giving them a C because I was expecting them to win the premiership. Well, not win the premiership. I mean, I guess 2nd or 3rd. But I was expecting them to at least contend for the championship this year. They were nowhere near it. I mean, come on. They had Fornaroli, Economides and Castro in the goal line. It's just the same problem with Melbourne Victory, only that we managed to win a few more games. And why did we get rid of Keogh? Come on, he was our best goal scorer last year. I don't know. Yeah, and Tony Popovic's gone. Glory just looked lost. I'm sorry, but we may only be above the Mariners next year. Next, in 5th place is Western United. They did pretty well for a first-year team, I guess. Look, they were a little inconsistent. Like, one week they would be going on like 6-goal thrashings, and then the next week they'd lose like 2-0. So, yeah, it was a little bit weird from Western United, to be honest. They had a pretty weird season. I think that's one of the things that you could be disappointed was their lack of consistency, because at times they look like the best team and at others very average. Berisha and Diamanti, that's a good combination up there. And I can see a lot of goals being scored for the next few years. Curto Filippo, decent in goals, I guess you could say, in the goalkeeping department. Look, they've got some decent players there. And I guess winning more games than they lost and winning a final, I guess that's what you can ask for a first-year team. I mean, they're not all going to be like the Wanderers, let's face it. Hopefully MacArthur can have a similar season to Western United. I was about to say Western Melbourne. One of their biggest issues was a lack of home ground. They were playing at GMHBA Stadium and Eureka Stadium and Witten Oval and then Jubilee Oval. Come on, choose a home ground, please. Anyway, look, I'll give them an A because, let's face it, they're a new team. So I guess you could argue that they only deserve a B because they did have a pretty good lineup, but at the end, it is a new team, new history, and you can't ask too much from a new team. I think that was a pretty good first season. Fourth was a much improved Brisbane Roar. They were competitive for the first half, but couldn't get many wins on the board. And then at some point, they just clicked and they started winning. And then they lost their elimination final. But I think overall they'd be pretty impressed with what they dished up this season. Their defence, arguably, apart from Sydney FC, probably the best defence in the competition, honestly. And Jamie Young, hats off to him. He was probably the goalkeeper of the year. He held many teams either goals or to just one goal. And let's face it, they were never good in the goals. Brisbane, they didn't really have a good goal scorer. Like, Roy O'Donovan, who was probably their best player, probably left to go back to Newcastle halfway through because I don't know what Robbie Fowler was doing with him. Scott McDonald came up, took his place. But apart from him, there wasn't really a lot in their forward line. Jamie Young basically single-handedly put them into the finals. Let's face it, there were a lot of 1-0 and 1-1 and 2-1 wins or draws. And Robbie Fowler did a very good job patching up their previously leaky defence into a defence where you could barely get a goal into. So I'll give him an A for that because they go from one of the worst teams to having one of the best defences in the competition. And if they had scored more goals, who knows? Maybe they would have been higher up the ladder. Maybe they would have been staring at a grand final berth. Warren Moon should do a decent job for next year. And yeah, I think overall a much improved season from the Roar. In third place was Wellington, the favourite to win the wooden spoon, given their mass exodus, but Davila came in, Ball came in, and they were some very... Oh, and Hopper came in, and they were some very good recruits who made a big impact for the Phoenix. And there was Liberato Kakache, Marinkovic did a very good job in the goals, and Cam Delvin and Poposco and McCallum, they were all really good rookies. I bet you, if it was an under-19s competition, they would have taken out the Premiership and Championship. Or, sorry, not under-19s, under-23, sorry. If it was an under-23 competition, Premiership, Championship double, for sure. Look, their lack of experience cost them in the air. Their poor start to the season, their poor end to the season cost them. And they were a little bit, like, dysfunctional in the forward line at different stages of the season. They did have that consistency issue. But overall, Ufuk Talay, to get them into third spot when they had a mass exodus of players the year before, when they were the favourite to win the wooden spoon, when everyone was predicting they were going to be a hapless team, I think, yeah, they deserve an A. Yeah, Talay did a good job, and let's see if he can continue next year. Second place is Melbourne City, who should have won the championship. No, that grand final was an example of the championship trophy being awarded to the wrong team. They scored in the 17th minute on the grand final day, okay? Harrison Delbridge, that was a goal that he scored. I don't know why they disallowed that goal. Apparently, Lockie Wales was blocking the goalie's vision. Can someone tell me if that's even a rule? Honestly, I found that so stupid. And they held Sydney scoreless for all 90 minutes. Unfortunately, Sydney eventually got the goal. But Melbourne City were very respectable in that grand final. Should have won it if it hadn't been for stupid reffing. I think overall they had a pretty good season. They did enough to finish in the top 2. Yes, they weren't exactly looking like the second best team in the comp for parts of the season. They'd get thrashed some weeks, like against Perth, Melbourne, Adelaide during that, like between rounds 9 to 17. Even lost to Newcastle, which is a bit of a shock. And they had some pretty stupid games, to be honest. But overall, for them to finish second, go all the way to the grand final, score the opening, or should have scored the opening goal if the VAR actually had some sense, and to on merit win the grand final, I think was a very good season for a Melbourne Victory. It's a shame that Eric Mombart's had to go home due to homesickness, but whoever takes over as Melbourne City coach has a good squad to work with. Let's hope they can win some silverware next year. And at the summit of the ladder by a big margin, Sydney FC. Alright, I did complain that Melbourne City maybe should have won the grand final, but at the end of the day, given Sydney FC's dominance, it's probably fitting that they won both the Premiership and Championship, even if they had a bit of VAR luck on the day. For about 20 rounds, they had only lost to one team, and that was the Wanderers. And I think it was only Wellington Phoenix, the only other team that was able to lay a draw to them. And then, obviously, they had a poor post-coronavirus period where they were just losing and drawing and losing. But when it mattered, and that was in the semi-final, they came back and they stormed Perth Glory to go into the grand final. And then they were able to hold Melbourne City goalless for 90 minutes. Well, apart from that Delbridge disallowed goal, they were able to hold Melbourne City scores for 90 minutes. And there was a bit of a moment of magic from Ryan Grant scoring up his nipple. And, well, Sydney FC won both trophies. I don't like them winning trophies, to be honest, because they've won so many. And come on, Newcastle, Melbourne City, Wellington, all those teams, come on, try and get it off Sydney FC next year, because it's annoying the heck out of me. But overall, you got to give Sydney an A. Oh, and give Melbourne City an A as well. I forgot to grade them. But yeah, Sydney, best team of the year. There's nothing else you could really say about that. The only thing that would have been more positive is if Sydney FC kept winning during the post-COVID bye. They would have ended up being the best team in history. Unfortunately, they've just got to settle for a regular Premiership and Championship, which I guess is not too bad either. I'd love that. As a Perth Glory fan, I'll settle for something like that. That's all I want. Come on, Perth, give me a championship. Just one. As for the A-League, it wasn't a great season. Attendances went down to sub 10,000. Look, I'm not talking about coronavirus. I know it was always going to be low there. But before then, they were only getting about, the poorer clubs only getting about 5,000-6,000 a game. The richer clubs only really getting about, 10,000 at best. And there was a lot of those mid-tier clubs getting about 7,000 to 9,000. So it was pretty disappointing, that department. Even Sydney FC, who dominated the league, only averaged about 12,000. So a little disappointing in that department. Ratings went down as well. And I'm a little bit concerned if they make a winter switch about how the ratings will be, because they're only averaging about 20,000 a game. I think they should televise more games on ABC, because those ones they were getting about 50,000, which is better than the 20 on Fox Sports. Their grand final was a bit disappointing because they decided to play it on the kids channel on a 2-hour delay, so that was always going to drop ratings. I think the grand final should honestly be live on the main ABC channel next year. Fox Sports, stop being so greedy. Just let all free-to-air viewers watch it, okay? Let's face it, it's a grand final. It should be for free. Yeah. I guess you could say, though, the standard of play during the post-COVID period was pretty good, given that the conditions were colder. So they were able to have some, there were able to be better quality football being played. But yeah, overall, it was a season known for all the wrong reasons, and let's hope they could make a bit of a better season next year. I hope you liked this video. Please like, please subscribe. Please comment what you think of the video down below, and check out some of my other videos, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.